Hi, thanks for coming to the NAPE YouTube site. Today, two authors of a recently published book on sustainability education present the first of two videos. Now, the first video provides a background to sustainability, its concerns and education. The second video will be uploaded in a few weeks' time and will examine the content of their book. This book is called Sustainability Education, a Classroom Guide. Both authors would be delighted to receive any feedback through the comments section for either video. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for inviting us to join you this afternoon and contribute to the discussion about sustainability education and how we may respond to it. We're delighted to be able to do that. But let us begin by introducing ourselves. I'm Steve Rawlinson, the guy on the left there, a physical geographer by training. My teaching experience encompassed the primary, secondary and university sectors. For 21 years, I was Principal Lecturer in Geography Education at Northumbria University, responsible for training primary teachers, and I was Geographical President 2015 to 2016. And until recently, I was Chair of the editorial board of its journal, Primary Geography. I have a special interest in fieldwork, as you can probably gather from the picture there, sustainability and environmental education.
And I'm the other chap in the picture, Stephen Scoffham. I've written books for children and resources for teachers for many years. I'm a school atlas consultant. I worked at Canterbury Christ Church University training primary school teachers, particularly in geography, for about 25 years. And I'm still based there as a visiting reader in sustainability and education. Like Steve, I've been president of the Geographical Association.
Together, we collaborated on this book that you can see in front of you, which brought together a distinguished team of authors from several countries. It came out last year, and responses to it have developed our thinking, which is reflected in this particular session. We'll say a lot more about the book as we go through the presentation, but we were delighted to receive a highly commended award from the Geographical Association to add to the very positive comments that we have gained over the last year or so. Our contribution this afternoon is based on really the book and what we found out from it. There are two parts to our talk this afternoon. The first one, we'll look at how did we get to here and how can education respond. The second part in the second video is what approach have we taken in our book and what does the future hold for that. So in this first video, we're going to focus on the first two questions, as in part one.
So I'm very briefly going to start sketching out the background to our current environmental problems and highlight three crucial events which all highlight our relationship with nature. Now, the first one is the agricultural revolution, which enabled people to extract wealth from the soil and to store the produce that they'd been planting and harvesting. And that event dates back thousands of years and as, of course, still very much part of modern life. Farming and the way that farming is conducted is crucially important in our relationship to nature. The second major event is one that's been talked about very much recently, which is European colonialism. And I was taught about the voyages of exploration, and they were really exciting stories of my childhood. But what we weren't taught about that time was that it was actually a brutal story of exploitation, subjugation, and environmental damage. And the third event, which is even more recent, is the Industrial Revolution, which has brought us enormous benefits, but unwittingly we may have been entered into a kind of Faustian pact. Faustus sold his soul to the devil in term for the benefit of short-term gain, but eventually the devil comes to exact his dues. And are we, the question I'm going to ask here, have we equally entered into some kind of pact like that? And now is the time of reckoning.
We can look at that from these particular graphs, because energy from fossil fuels has brought us great benefits, as these graphs show how economic activity has mushroomed in recent years. Since 1950, just about every indicator has shown exponential growth, and this is known as the Great Acceleration. Innovations and technological progress have brought huge benefits and improved living conditions beyond recognition for large numbers of people. However, there is a limit to what the planet itself can sustain, and it's now abundantly apparent, though not to politicians apparently, that growth cannot be sustained indefinitely.
So one way of understanding the scale of the ecological and environmental problems we face is to think about the carrying capacity of the planet. Scientists at the Stockholm Resilience Centre and elsewhere have identified a number of key systems on which life depends. The problem is that most of these systems have become significantly degraded and destabilized by human activity and are now close to or exceeding tipping points beyond which runaway feedback mechanisms are liable to take over. The wedges on the diagram indicate some of those tipping points and some of those danger points. The red wedges in particular are the ones to watch. And using that approach of planetary boundaries, economist Kate Raworth has taken us a little bit further. She's used the metaphor of the ring donut, that's the green rings on the diagram, to identify a sweet spot, which she calls the safe and just space for humanity. And that safe and just space for humanity towards which we need to steer is bounded on the one side by the ecological ceilings that I've just been talking about, but bounded on the other one by social foundations. And those social foundations are every bit as important as the ecological ceiling. That's a nice thought from Kate Raworth and an inspiring one. Just imagine if ours could be the turnaround generation that started putting humanity back on track for a globally sustainable future. Because what we want to put across is that there are lots of solutions and ways forward, as well as lots of threats and dangers ahead.
So there have been many responses to the crises that we currently find ourselves in, and I thought it was quite useful to look at three particular international responses and powerful statements that have come out about this particular wake-up call, which we certainly need to have at the present point in time. So the first one comes from Antonio Guterres, who makes the point that the global climate fight will be won or lost in this crucial decade. Humanity has a choice: cooperate or perish. And that reflects very much the Mike Berners-Lee book, which I can thoroughly recommend, which just makes the comment that there is no planet B. The second comment comes from Marco Lambertini, of the Director General of the World Wide Fund for Nature. And his comment is: the message is clear and the lights are flashing red. We know what is happening, we know the risks, and we know the solutions. And I think that's a really, really strong statement there. We know the problem, we know the solutions, but of course, what it doesn't say there, do we have the will to take action? And that takes us really to the Berlin Declaration in 2021, which makes the point that we are confident that education is a powerful enabler of positive change, of mindsets and worldviews, and that it can support all dimensions of sustainable development and well-being. Quite simply, that's saying education is one of the keys to addressing the problem. So put simply, by the time the children that are currently facing us in our classroom complete their education, we may have collectively set the course which will determine what happens to the world for thousands of years to come. And it's true to say that sitting in those classrooms across the world are the leaders of tomorrow who can promote world peace and sustainable living. What we teach now will inform and perhaps be a key influence on future policies and action. No pressure then. So that's a little bit about how we got to this crisis point. So how can education respond? That's what we'd now like to turn our attention to.
So there are lots of wonderful educational initiatives going on at the moment which focus on sustainability and climate change. And Steve and I have been engaging with these different communities over the last year, and amazed at what good work is going on. But despite these laudable efforts, the pace of change is very tentative and too slow. And there is what we recognise, and which many others recognise, as what could be expressed as a radical disconnect between what we're doing in education and what we are expected to do, but what we know we need to do in the current circumstances. And this isn't the place to explore in detail why that reality gap or that gap has developed, but it is perhaps the place to consider how that gap could be bridged. How could we get to the other side of the chasm, the point where schooling really does develop the values and mindset for more sustainable living, and that we start urgently building that bridge and putting the girders into place, and continuing that metaphor of the girders. Even if we can't lift the girders ourselves, we can all help to tighten the bolts and hammer in the rivets of an emerging structure.
So the question that seems to be being asked here is, what do children and teachers want? What do they want from their curriculum at the moment? Well, a recent survey called The Big Ask, conducted by the Children's Commissioner, revealed that young people are concerned with mental health and well-being and the environment above all else. And we believe that sustainability education has the potential to address both of these concerns. However, polls have also shown that young people don't feel that education is meeting their needs. We have to ask, why is that? Maybe the last statistic on this slide, that 82% of primary and secondary teachers feel their training has been inadequate in the areas concerning their pupils, lies at the heart of the problem. And that in itself raises some fundamental issues about how we train teachers, how we equip them, and the curriculum that they work to. And behind all this lies the even bigger question, what is education for? The climate crisis, the environment crisis, the biodiversity crisis, call it what you will, raises some very big and complex issues to consider. And what is often missing from this is the understanding that they're all connected and they cannot be seen in isolation. And significantly, these issues pivot around social and cultural values.
So one of the questions which we're asking is, are the ways in which the curriculum is currently configured appropriate? Sustainability is about making connections and recognizing links, but there's a danger that a curriculum built around the disciplines will develop and is developing a more siloed approach. We believe, or are arguing, that the subject boundaries need to be more porous than they are at the moment. Working through themes or synthesizing subject and so on are two promising options shown in this particular diagram.
As you might expect, two geographers would argue quite strongly that the value and importance of place is really significant, and engaging with the local environment is a way forward for sustainability. But we can go beyond the mere opinion of two geographers. Research shows that direct contact with the local environment, whether urban or rural, has an important role in building children's sense of belonging, their sense of identity, their sense of attachment, and their self-confidence. And this impacts on sustainability because, as Macy and Johnson remind us, only those who love the world and are fascinated by it will want to care for it.
We also want to flag up the importance of different ways of knowing. And this is something which, again, is very important for understanding more about sustainability and the way that we can approach it. We need to engage the head, hands, and heart rather than just the head. Human beings are more than information processors, and how we feel about things, how we engage with things is absolutely critical to developing a fully fledged, deep understanding. And of course, you can see in that diagram, not only have we put head, hands, heart up there, but hope is right in the center, developing children's sense of agency through investigations, active learning, and imagination. So in our current education system, the head is foregrounded. In fact, a particular type of knowledge is foregrounded, while the other ways of knowing tend to take a back seat. And so there is a change that needs to be recognized here, and work on sustainability education, if it is to be truly effective and engaging, needs to be much more holistic than the type of learning that is currently so often found in schools. But of course, there are lots of barriers and difficulties in approaching sustainability education, which we're going to address in the next video. But it can be a scary business for teachers who perhaps haven't been terribly well trained or had no training at all in this area to tackle sustainability, climate change, and the related issues around the crisis which we face. And doom-mongering and despair, grief and anxiety, denial, all those sort of things come together in a fairly toxic combination all too often. The evidence is that teachers are opting for timely sustainability topics, topical ones around current events such as plastic pollution. They're safe topics and they're bounded, but they are leading children towards a very patchy, disparate and unstructured sense of what sustainability is all about. And of course, it depends very much on the enthusiasm and commitment of individuals. A piecemeal approach to what is now being regarded as the greatest challenge humanity has ever faced simply doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in politics, and it doesn't make sense in education. So what we're going to explore in book part 2 is what we've done in our book, and offer some thoughts about the future in the way that we can really get to grips with and open up a discussion around sustainability, education, and the future.
Thank you very much indeed for a most illuminating description of what sustainability actually is all about and the concerns we have with it. And hopefully part 2 will point the direction of what can be done about sustainability in the long term. So I'm most grateful to you both. And for those who want to read more, there is a reference list in the description below this video. So do have a look at that and any links which are there as well. So Steve and Stephen, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.